So let me know.
Still loading.
Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining me. I'm Evelyn Ackah, founder of Ackah Business Immigration Law. Today on our LinkedIn Live, we're talking about a question I hear all the time. Should I apply for a work permit or a study permit? It sounds like a simple question, but it's not simple simply because it's not about choosing the permit that seems easier or faster. It's not just about that. A work permit and a study permit are designed for two very different purposes. They come with different requirements and different conditions and different responsibilities. So on today's LinkedIn Live, we're going to talk about how choosing the wrong approach can affect your ability to remain in Canada, to work legally, to complete your studies, and pursue future immigration opportunities. This is why you should understand the difference between before you accept a job, pay tuition, register for a program, or make plans to move to Canada. Before we begin, today's discussion is for general information and commentary only. It is not legal advice. Every immigration matter is different, and the right option will depend on your specific qualifications, your plans, and your personal circumstances. Today, I'm going to cover what a work permit actually allows you to do, what a study permit actually allows you to do, whether students can work in Canada, whether workers can study in Canada, and the difference between open and employer-specific work permits, how students may transition to working after graduation, and what happens when you switch from one type of permit to another. The mistakes applicants need to stop making when they're making applications. So let's get started on our Wednesday LinkedIn Live. The easiest way to understand the difference between a work permit and a study permit is to ask yourself one question. What is your main reason for coming to Canada? If your primary purpose is to accept authorized employment, you will generally need a work permit so that you can work legally. If your primary purpose is to complete an eligible educational program, you will generally need a study permit. These permits are not interchangeable, and you need to be aware of that. A study permit should not be treated as a general work permit, and a work permit should not be treated as automatic permission to enroll in any educational program that you choose. That's not what they are. And neither permit is an automatic pathway to permanent residence. You need to know this for sure. That is something I want people to understand very, very clearly. Neither one of them are direct paths to permanent residence. You may hear people say, just study in Canada and you will automatically get a work permit. That's not the case. Or you may hear people say, once you get a job offer, you can come to Canada and start working right away. Those statements leave out some very, very important requirements. Your plan must make sense under the immigration rules, and you must remain eligible at every stage of your process. Do not choose a permit because someone told you it was the easiest way into Canada. Choose the route that genuinely matches your purpose and for which you can provide strong supporting evidence and confirmation of that you fit and you qualify. What a work permit actually allows? A work permit authorizes a foreign national to work in Canada under specific conditions. There are two main types of work permits, employer-specific work permits and open work permits. An employer-specific work permit may restrict you to only working for a particular employer, a particular occupation, and a particular location, specific work location, as well as a specific period of time, 1 year, 2 year, or 3 year. If your work permit names one employer, you generally cannot simply move to another employer because you received a better offer. A new employer may need to complete immigration steps all over again, and you may need a new work permit or authorization before beginning the new position. You can't just jump to another employer. Your employer cannot give you permission to ignore the conditions on your permit. A manager saying, it's fine, you can start on Monday, is not an immigration authorization. You need to get that work permit. However, an open work permit may allow you to work for most eligible employers in Canada, but open work permits are only available in very specific circumstances. You do not receive an open work permit simply because you want more flexibility. You must qualify for the particular category under which the open work permit is available. Even an open work permit may include restrictions relating to the type of work you can perform, your location, or medical requirements in order to do the work you need to do. Read the actual permit so you know exactly what's permissible. Do not assume that the word open means there are no conditions whatsoever, because there are always conditions, even for an open work permit. What does a study permit actually allow you to do? A study permit authorizes an international student to study at an eligible Canadian educational institution. Students are generally expected to remain enrolled at a designated learning institution and actively pursue their studies while they are on their study permits. This means making reasonable progress toward completing the program and following the conditions listed on the study permit. A study permit is issued for studying alone. The ability to work may be included, but it is secondary to the student's academic purpose. Eligible international students may be permitted to work off campus up to 24 hours per week during regular academic sessions, and they may be able to work full-time during regularly scheduled breaks, such as summer breaks and holidays over the Christmas season. But not every international student is automatically allowed to work. Your eligibility can depend on the type of program you are taking, whether you are studying full-time, whether your school is an eligible designated learning institution, and whether your work permit or your study permit contains the appropriate work conditions that allow you to work off campus, whether you continue to meet the requirements, and whether you're currently on authorized leave. Working more hours than permitted can be considered unauthorized work, and this could be significantly impactful. Stopping your studies while continuing to work can also create serious problems for you. You cannot say that you are in Canada primarily as a student while treating employment as your main activity. Your conduct in Canada needs to remain consistent with the permit that you hold. Okay? It's very important. Also, a study permit is not a general work permit. You need to be clear. This is where many students get into difficulty and real troubles. They assume that because they can work part-time, their study permit is essentially a work permit with classes attached. It's the other way around. It is not the case. You are there to go to school. The work authorization available to eligible students is connected to their continued compliance as students. If you stop attending school, take an extended leave, withdraw from your program, or no longer meet the requirements to work off campus, your authorization to work may also be affected. Students need to monitor both their academic standing and their immigration conditions. Do not rely only on what a friend, recruiter, or classmate tells you. Go to the International Student Office and make sure. What another student was permitted to do may not apply to you based on what they're taking at school. And you are not responsible for other people, only responsible for understanding your own work permit and your own requirements. Please do not enroll in a program simply because someone promises it will guarantee a work permit or permanent residence. Before you pay any tuition, confirm the following: whether the institution is a designated learning institution, whether the specific program may support future postgraduate work permit eligibility, whether field of study requirements apply, whether you can meet the financial requirements so you can stay in school, and whether the program generally supports your career and immigration objectives. The name of the school alone is not enough. The specific program and your individual circumstances matter significantly. Can someone study while holding a work permit? Holding a work permit does not automatically give you permission to begin a long-term academic program. Most often, you will still need a study permit as well as that work permit. However, depending on the length and type of study, you may need a separate study permit. There are some limited exceptions that may apply, but workers should not assume they can enroll in any program simply because they already have temporary status in Canada. It is possible in certain circumstances to hold both a work permit and a study permit. However, you must qualify for both independently. You may also need to explain how you will realistically balance your employment and your studies. The two applications must make sense together if you're wanting to go to school. For example, you can do a program for less than 6 months with the work permit and not get a study permit. But if it is full-time employment, full-time studies, and you don't have a clear explanation of how both can be done, such as one is at night and one is during the day, you may not get your two work permits. Having two permits does not remove the conditions of either permit. You still need to comply with both. Okay? Moving from a study permit to a work permit. Many international students hope to work in Canada after graduation. The post-graduation work permit, commonly called a PGWP, may provide the opportunity for eligible graduates to do that work after they finish school, but a postgraduate work permit is not automatic. Not every school and not every program makes a student eligible. Eligibility may depend on factors, including the designated learning institution, the specific program completed, the length of the program, the type of credential, the student's enrollment history, language requirements, and field of study requirements in applicable cases. Such things as well as whether the student has complied with all the conditions of the study permit. Did they graduate? This is why the postgraduate work permit eligibility should be reviewed before you enroll in school, not after you graduate. Students may generally have up to 180 days after graduation to apply for a PGWP, but that does not mean they should wait until the last minute. Your study permit will generally stop being valid on the earlier of the expiry date printed on the study permit, 90 days after you complete your studies. The validity of your study permit when you submit your PGWP application can affect whether you are authorized to work while waiting for a decision. A student who submits an eligible work permit application before their study permit expires and they meet all the applicable requirements may be able to work while the application is still being processed. A student whose study permit has already expired may face a very different situation and may have to wait until the actual work permit is approved or issued before beginning employment. Do not start working simply because you submitted an application for a PGWP. First, confirm that you meet all the requirements to work while waiting. Moving from a work permit to a study permit. The transition from a worker to a student also needs to be very carefully managed. Suppose you hold a work permit and apply for a study permit before your work permit expires. Submitting the study permit application may allow you to remain in Canada while the application is being processed. However, it does not automatically extend your authorization to work. When your original work permit expires, you will generally need to stop working unless you have another valid authorization to work in the process. You also cannot assume that submitting the study permit application allows you to begin your new program immediately. In many cases, you must wait until the actual study permit has been approved before beginning your studies. This is why timing really matters. You need to understand when your work permit expires, when your academic program begins, whether you can apply from inside Canada, whether you can work during the transition, whether you can begin studying while the application is pending, what status you will hold while waiting. Do not leave these questions until the week your program starts. Please be proactive. Get ahead of the curve and make sure you understand exactly what's required. Maintained status is frequently misunderstood by many people who hold study permits and work permits. It may allow a temporary resident to remain in Canada while IRCC processes a qualifying application submitted before their current status expired. But maintained status does not give everyone the same rights. What you are allowed to continue doing depends on your previous permit and the type of application you submitted. For example, a worker who applies to extend a work permit before expiry may be permitted to continue working under the same conditions while waiting for the new work permit to be approved. A student who applies to extend a study permit before expiry may be permitted to continue studying under the existing conditions of the study permit. A worker who applies for a study permit must generally stop working when the original work permit expires because you've changed your status. And a student who applies to become a visitor but generally stops studying when the study permit expires must also stop. Submitting an application for a different type of status does not automatically carry your previous work or study authorization forward. You may not get maintained status. The phrase, "I submitted an application," is not enough. You need to know the following: which application was submitted, when it was submitted, what status you previously held, whether the application was complete, what activities you are permitted to continue doing, and always keep proof that the application was successfully submitted. Make sure you have screenshots of everything. Saving an application in an online account is not the same as submitting it. You must submit it. Which permit is better for permanent residents? People often ask me that question, whether a work permit or a study permit is better to gain permanent residence down the line. There is no universal answer. It really depends. A Canadian educational credential may support certain immigration programs, but it does not guarantee permanent residence. Canadians' work experience may support certain programs as well for PR, but not every type of work experience will qualify. And a job offer does not always provide additional points or create a permanent residence pathway any longer. A provincial nomination is not automatic, and immigration programs, selection categories, and eligibility requirements can certainly change. The better question is, which option genuinely fits my background, my qualifications, my finances, my career plans, and my long-term immigration strategy? Do not build your entire future around one assumption. Review the full pathway before making a major financial or professional commitment. Some of the most common mistakes people make include the following: assuming a job offer automatically gives someone permission to work. It does not. Starting work before the work permit is approved. A no-no, absolutely not to be done. Changing employers while holding an employer-specific work permit also can't be done. Assuming a study permit allows unlimited employment. There are definitely limits, 24 hours. Working more hours than permitted as a student, not allowed. Stopping your studies but continuing to work full-time, a no-no. Choosing a school without confirming the PGWP eligibility, assuming a PGWP guaranteed after graduation, and believing that submitting any application extends all previous applications, or waiting until the expiry before reviewing the next step and renewing your status. Relying on promises from an employer, school recruiter, or a friend instead of checking the immigration rules with a lawyer. Or assuming guarantees that you are guaranteed permanent residence. Nobody is guaranteed permanent residence. Nobody. It's really important that you understand that. So, in closing, a work permit and a study permit serve very different purposes. One is primarily for authorized employment, and the other is for authorized study at an educational institution. Although students may have limited work authorization off campus, and some workers may actually qualify to study, those additional activities do not replace the main purpose of the permit. Do not ask only which permit is easier. Ask instead, which permit am I genuinely eligible for, and which one matches what I actually plan to do in Canada? Before accepting a job, paying tuition, or changing your status, review the conditions, understand the complete pathway you're looking to pursue, confirm the important deadlines, and check whether future permits are actually available to you. Make sure your plan is realistic, Get proper guidance when you are uncertain with an experienced immigration lawyer, and a permit is a temporary authorization. Know that it is not a promise of permanent residence and is not permission to ignore the conditions attached to it. Make the decision based on the rules, not on assumptions or promises or gossip from your friends. Thank you so much for joining me today on our Ackah Business Immigration Law LinkedIn Live. I'm Evelyn Ackah, founder of Ackah Business Immigration Law, and I hope this discussion helps you make informed decisions about working and studying in Canada. I look forward to answering your questions and speaking with you next time. Take good care.